Hey, this is Rachel, and I would like to welcome you to the first podcast for the 2016 Charity Challenge. Today we have three things to cover. This is our Getting Started podcast, and we're going to be talking about one, preparing to be successful, so laying the groundwork for the next 10 weeks. Step two, food diary. I know I already can hear your eyes rolling out there in virtual worlds, but bear with me. And then three, talking about things like calories, protein, fats, and carbs in kind of a general sense. Next week, in the second podcast, we're going to get a lot more specific about some of the foods to focus on and maybe some of the ones to perhaps avoid. So that's our task item for today. When it comes to making change, research shows us that almost all of us in any kind of behavior change go through this model. So we go from maybe not thinking about making a change all the way to making it part of our lifestyle. And what I've found is that a lot of times we go from thinking about, in our case, losing weight, to immediately taking action. So we decide to go to the gym. We decide to eat salads every day for lunch and give up our sweet tea. But in my experience, the most important part of making successful long-term change when it comes to diet and weight loss is that preparation stage. So I would invite you, I know it's not sexy, but I would invite you to spend some time, maybe today, maybe throughout the course of the week, doing some real preparation for the next 10 weeks. The people who have a really good plan in place are the people who historically are the ones who lose 20, 30, even 40 pounds throughout the course of our fall challenge. So the first step would be to do a cost benefits analysis. And so I would encourage you to write this down. Research shows that when we write things down, it makes it a lot more attentive in terms of our mindset, and it also leads to more success because there's this mindfulness about actually writing. So I'd encourage you to write out one side of a piece of paper the benefits of losing weight, eating healthier, exercise, doing the charity challenge, and then on the other side, the costs. So the bad things about it. There are bad things about it. So going on a diet means that you won't get to enjoy all your favorite foods. Going on a weight loss journey means you're probably going to have to exercise more. So list out all the benefits and be specific, and then list out all the negative things about undertaking this journey. And I will be honest with you, I probably shouldn't say this, but if at the end of your cost benefits analysis, you have more costs than you do benefits, then maybe now is not the right time for you to undertake a weight loss journey. Not to say that now is, or that there isn't a time in the future, but perhaps now is not that time. So be honest with this. No one has to see it except for you. So once you've decided, hopefully, that this is a worthwhile endeavor, then also the next step would be to determine what is standing in your way of being successful. So I listed some examples here for barriers. So common ones that we hear: I don't have time to exercise, or I'm a stress eater or an emotional eater. I have to cook for my family, and my family likes to eat some things, and I can't eat those things when I'm on a diet. Or, something as simple as I have a sweet tooth. I really love ice cream. So write down all the barriers that you have that stand between you and being successful at weight loss. And you can also think about things historically. So if you've tried to lose weight before, what are those things that prevented you from being successful? If we look back and we can identify some things that stood in our way or made it hard, we can hopefully turn to the right side of our column, which is strategies, and we can identify ways to work around that. I like to think about this as creating a really good roadmap. So if you know that there's an obstacle in your way, like you're driving to Atlanta and you're going to Henry County and there's, a 2-car pileup, then rather than just sitting there and getting frustrated in traffic, you find a way around it. So that's why we like to identify barriers and then find appropriate strategies. So some common ones, if you don't have time to work out, try to rearrange your schedule. Find times in the day where perhaps you don't have family commitments. Morning is a good example, or lunchtime if you have some time during your work day. And, find some other strategies that you can utilize. Like, for example, if you're a stress eater, are there stress management techniques that you can use instead? So I encourage you to find the barriers and then, brainstorm some ideas about what you can do to overcome those. I did include a resource here in the email that you received for some common weight loss barriers and some strategies that experts in the field have helped come up with. So if you have one of those barriers, maybe there's a suggestion that you might find useful. So the last part of our preparation stage here is going to be actually determine what your goals are. I've heard a lot of people over the years, I say, okay, what's your goal? And they say, well, I want to lose weight. All right. Well, how much weight do you want to lose? When do you want to lose it? What's your short-term goal? What's your long-term goal? What are the steps that you're going to take in order to lose weight? So I'm sure most of you have heard about the SMART goal principles, and that is really defining your goal and making sure that it's something that you can A, achieve, and B, that you know when you've achieved it. If you say, I want to lose weight, do you want to lose 5 pounds because you've lost 5 pounds? Or do you want to lose 50 pounds? There's a big difference there. So I'd encourage you to, again, going back to writing, write down what your actual goals are when it comes to this particular 10 weeks, as well as in the long term. And so the great way, or a good way to determine what your long-term goal might be, would be to use the BMI chart, which is a relationship between your height and weight. And in, again, the email you received, there's a link there. So if you haven't done your BMI, you can do that and see where you stand on the charts. When it comes to BMI, the first one that we want to get below is that number 30. So if we have a BMI of 30 or above, that means that we are in the obese category. And we know that when we're obese, then we have a much higher risk of chronic conditions like diabetes and heart disease, hypertension. And so we really want to be outside of that 30 and up range. So if you're someone who's above 30, your first goal, maybe not in this first 10 weeks, maybe longer term, would be to drop below 30. So if you're in that 25 to 30 range, that puts you in the overweight category, which has less risks associated with it. But you know that if you continue on that path of even, a couple pounds a year of weight gain, over time, you may end up in that obese category. And so for you, what we want to think about is getting below 25. And a BMI below 25 is what we consider, quote unquote, healthy weight. And of course, we know that there is no one size fits all, and there is no chart that can tell us personally what a healthy weight is. And so if you want to do a body composition assessment where we do percent body fat and measurements, please feel free to email me and we can set that up. So once you've kind of gotten a picture about what your longer term goals might be, I would encourage you to pick a shorter term goal. Where do you want to be at the end of 10 weeks? A good rule of thumb for healthy, sustainable weight loss would be between 1 and 2 pounds per week. If you have a lot of weight to lose, especially if you're a man, you may be able to lose more than that, especially in the beginning. But we know that when we do healthy, sustained weight loss, 1 to 2 pounds a week is probably the sweet spot. So think about that, and then you can say, okay, where do I want to be in 10 weeks? Where do I want to be in, 6 months? Where do I want to be in a year? And you can kind of use that to create a goal that has a timeline associated with it. And then the third part is, now that you've established your goal for weight loss, what are you going to do in order to achieve it? So some things to think about. How many days are you going to exercise? What days are you going to exercise? How many hours a day are you going to sleep? Sleep is really important for weight loss. And then things like tracking your diet, which we're going to talk about in a moment. So I encourage you to write all these things down. You can share it perhaps with a loved one if you wanted to have somebody help you be accountable. Maybe you have somebody in Charity Challenge that you know and you want to share it with. You're welcome to share it with me as well, or keep it to yourself. Totally up to you. So now that you have determined your goals and written everything down, the next step is to think about food. So when it comes to weight loss, Food is the most important part of the equation. When it comes to body composition, we know that about 80% of your weight loss is going to be based on what you eat, and 20% is going to be based on what you do, so exercise. So 80% food, 20% exercise. So as you can see, you really have to focus on the food if you want to be successful. I strongly encourage you to keep a food journal. Why? Because we are really bad at keeping up with how much food we eat, what do we eat, and why we're eating it. I'm not saying that you have to write down or track your food for the rest of your life. But if you want to be as successful as possible over the next 10 weeks, I would strongly encourage you to keep a detailed daily food journal. Besides calories, which I know that we're all familiar with, quality is also going to be important. We're going to talk a lot about not just calories, but also fat, protein, and carbs, because sometimes for a lot of us, eating less is not going to be the answer, which I know is crazy. Also, it helps you stay accountable, and then it can also unveil patterns of eating. So especially if you're someone who's a stress eater or an emotional eater or a bored eater, it can be really helpful to examine that. And then for those of you who love data like I do, we all work here in higher education. So this is going to be evidence-based. So if you're being successful or not, what you can do is you have the information at your disposal to make changes without feeling. So based on data as opposed to kind of subjective information. So keep a food journal. That's all I can say. The one that I suggest is to use an online app or account like MyFitnessPal. You can certainly use a different site, but MyFitnessPal, in my opinion, is one of the better ones. It's the one that I personally use. And they have both an online, so computer-based website, as well as a smartphone app for both Apple and Android. And the cool thing is you can even use a barcode scanner. So if you don't have an account, please go to MyFitnessPal or download the app. It's free, so there's no money involved here. Create a username, password, and then it will ask you to put in your current weight or goal. It's going to require you to do that, so go ahead and do it, but we're going to change it in 5 minutes. The optional thing to do is to add me as a friend. My username is there. And the cool thing is that I can see your journal, you can see mine, and it's a great way to get ideas about other things to eat. And if you ever get to a point where you're struggling with what you're eating, you can shoot me an email and say, hey, Rachel, will you look at my diet journal? And within 30 seconds, I can see what you're eating. So it's a really good tool. Couple resources here. If you are skeptical about food journals, there's a really great BBC, it's like a 5-minute documentary about someone who keeps a food journal and the importance of keeping an accurate one. So I would encourage you to watch that. And then also a Wall Street Journal article about some of the benefits of keeping a food journal, including significant research over multiple studies that shown in even an organized weight loss program, the people who keep a journal versus people who don't, even if they're getting the same information and support, the people who kept a journal lost 2 times as much weight as the people who didn't. So again, even if you don't keep the journal forever and ever, 10 weeks is a pretty short period of time. And the nice thing is once you get a feel for journaling, it becomes a lot easier moving forward to eyeball portions and to kind of know what to eat in order to hit your numbers, which we're going to talk about in just a moment. So now that you are totally convinced of the benefits of keeping a food journal, what we're going to do now is figure out how much do you need to eat. So if you use the MyFitnessPal account or any account, it's going to give you a number of calories that it wants you to eat per day, and that's based on a computer algorithm. What we're going to do is find a number that is based on you personally that is probably going to be a little less painful than the one that MyFitnessPal is going to give you, because they like to err on the side of not giving you enough food. So what you're going to do is we're going to find an estimate for how many calories you need in a day. So first, you're going to figure out how active you are. Now, be honest. Talk about how active you are right now, not how active you were in college or how active you think you're going to be during challenge, because you can always update this number. So pick a number, 11, 12, 13, or 14, and then think about, is that reflective of you? And you can do a 0.5. So for example, say you do some exercise, 2 or 3 days a week, or you walk your dog 3 or 4 days a week, you could do an 11.5. That would be perfectly fine. Since we are focusing on weight loss, I would err on the side of going a little bit too low as opposed to a little bit too high. Don't go crazy though. If you're really a 12, don't put that you're an 11, because we don't want you to start off with too few calories, because that's not going to lead to long-term success. So once you've determined your activity multiplier or lifestyle multiplier, you're going to take your current weight in pounds. Then you're going to multiply that number by your multiplier. So say I weigh 200 pounds and I'm a 12 for my activity level. So that means my current number of calories that I need daily is about 2,400. Now that's the number that you would need an estimate in order to maintain your current weight. But we're all here because we don't want to maintain our current weight. We want to lose some weight. And it says now you're going to take that number and subtract between 250 and 500 calories. So this is now going to be your goal and what you're going to update in your MyFitnessPal account. Now, you may be very excited to lose weight. You may be very enthusiastic. You really want to win that money for a charity. You may be tempted to go more than 500, or maybe you're tempted to start at 500. I would advise you to start on the lower side, even like 250, and then over time you can make changes. You don't want to go too high too fast, because then you've got nowhere to go. So I would encourage you to take that number that you just came up with and subtract around 250 calories. If you're a man, I will give you a little extra. I would say maybe start with around 350. That would be my recommendation. Do with it as you please. So now that we have our estimated goal for our calories for each day, we're now going to figure out where those calories should come from. All calories are not the same, and we're going to talk a lot more about this next week. But of course, we all know fat, protein, and carbs. In different times, carbs have been bad, fat has been bad. Protein's probably never bad, maybe. Anyways, so what we want to do is have this be a good starting point. Again, maybe you've done Atkins in the past and you've had really good luck with low carb, or maybe you've done low fat in the past and had really good luck with something like an Ornish style. I would encourage you to start here, because this is a good place that we can tweak moving forward. If you start really low on carbs or really low on fat, doesn't give us a lot of wiggle room moving forward. So this would be my recommendation to start with. So then what you're going to do is you're going to go into your MyFitnessPal account and you're going to set these numbers for your personal goals. So what you're going to do is you're going to go under your homepage, you're going to go to goals, and then it's going to say daily nutrition goals. You're going to hit edit. And then for calories, you're going to put in that number. So if we go back to our previous example of being a 12 on activity and being 200 pounds, so that my total goal, if I subtract 250, is going to be 2,150 calories per day. So I'm going to plug that number into calories, and then I'm going to change my percentages. So I'm going to make my carbs 40, my fat 30, and my protein 30, and I'm going to hit save. So then once you go into your diet journal, and you can see this is a screenshot of mine from, actually almost a year ago. So what you'll see is totals at the bottom and the goals. So your goal should be that number, and then you're going to see grams. So 190 grams of carbs, 63 grams of fat, 143 grams of protein. And that's what you're going to want to try to work towards. So in the beginning, this is going to be probably way off, and that's okay. So for the first probably 3 days, 5 days, maybe a week, I want you to really just observe where you are with those numbers. I'm going to make a prediction. I'm going to predict that your calories are going to probably be about that, maybe a little higher, maybe a little lower, but your carbs are going to be higher and your protein is going to be way lower than the numbers that are plugged in here. And so what I want you to do is plug in, start logging your food and observe how far off you are. And then over the next week, we can start to make changes and talk about foods to include and foods to maybe eliminate or at least reduce to help us get closer to those numbers. So use the first few days as a data gathering experiment. I would encourage you to, one, log often, especially if we have goals about hitting those numbers, fat, protein, carbs, and calories, or getting close to them each day. It's going to be really important to log, ideally after every time that you eat, or certainly at least a couple times a day, because if you only log at the end of the day at dinner time, then you have already eaten everything and there's nothing you can do if you're really far off on those numbers. So get into the habit of logging often. You can also, if you're feeling really froggy, and we'll talk about this more in the future, log in advance. So that way you can log before you eat the food and then you can adjust as necessary before you even eat it. But that's advanced and we'll talk about that next time. So be sure to make your diet as accurate as possible. So if you watch the video, the BBC video, this lady, she thought she was eating 1,200 calories or thereabouts a day, when in fact she goes to the lab and she's eating 3,000 calories a day, and she was keeping a diet journal. So the important thing is to include all food and drinks. So make sure that you include salad dressing, olive oil that you bake your food in or fry your eggs in. Make sure that you include things like cheese that you sprinkled on a salad or peanut butter. Little things that add up over the course of the day. A big one here is coffee. So if you add sugar or creamer or some of those other flavored type things to your coffee beverage, those add up very quickly. Don't forget about those because that can make the difference of several hundred calories over the course of the day. Also, if you're a drinker, log your alcohol. You're going to see how much those 2 or 3 beers or 2 or 3 glasses of wine add up, and that may be motivational for you moving forward. Same thing if you're a sweet tea drinker or a Coke drinker. Make sure you log your beverages as well as your food. And then estimate or measure to make sure that you're being appropriate when you estimate your serving sizes. It's really easy to put, oh yeah, I had a half a cup of cereal when in fact you had 3 cups of cereal. So if you've never gotten a measuring cup out and measured what a serving of rice or pasta or cereal looks like, do that now because you're going to be really depressed. I would encourage you to do that because once you start to see it, you'll be able to estimate a lot more closely. It's not to say that you have to measure with your tablespoon or your measuring cup everything forever. It really only takes probably a few days or a week or so before you get to pretty good eyeballing ability. So I encourage you to do that, especially with some of our carbier stuff like sweet potatoes, chips, crackers. As you can see here on the left hand side is some estimates if you don't want to physically measure your food. So again, a cup is a serving size of things like pasta and rice, and that's only about the size of your fist, so it's not much. A lot of times when we go out to eat, a serving, which you're put on your plate, is more like 3 or 6 servings, especially of our carbohydrates, so keep that in mind. Same thing with snack items or things that come in boxes or bags. I have here some pita chips, which are delicious. Count them out. You can't say, oh yeah, I had a serving of chips when you ate half a bag. So look and see how many of a particular item are one serving. And if you eat more than that, that's fine, but make sure that you log that appropriately. Mexican restaurants can be problematic. They bring that bowl of chips and salsa, and before you know it, you've had a whole bowl. That's okay if that's what you want to do, but make sure that you log, I had 50 chips and not 15. So be mindful of that. So now you're ready to get started. I told you we weren't going to tell you today about what foods to eat or what foods not to eat. This is really about laying the foundation so that you can be successful over the long term. So what the take action steps are, do the writing assignment. Assignment sounds really class-like. The writing suggestion. Figure out why you're here. Why do you want to lose weight? Is now the right time for you to lose weight? What are the bad things about losing weight? What are the things that have stood in your past or made it so that you weren't successful before? What are you going to do differently this time? Most people try and fail to lose weight multiple times before they're successful. What's going to be different for you this time if you've done this before? I would encourage you to spend some time thinking about that. And then finally, the last 2 steps, create your MyFitnessPal account, set your diet numbers based on what we talked about with your estimated calorie needs, activity level, and then subtraction. And then make sure that you set your fat, protein, and carbs. And then spend the next few days logging your food. It should be a pretty informative experience. And I hope you enjoy the process. It's not as bad as it sounds. So that's going to be it for today. Please review the other resources that I sent. If you have any questions, I'm always an email or a phone call away. So please let me know. And then Wednesday, whether you're able to come in person, if you're on the Macon campus or located nearby, that would be great. We'd love to have you. We'll also be live streaming that. We're going to talk more about this stuff and do some kind of hands-on. So take a look either online or come visit us and we'll have some fun together. So good luck as you get started. Enjoy the process.